Hello and welcome to Straight Talk, Supply Chain Insights, the podcast for your supply chain leader who is on the go and wants to be in the know. And now, your host, Lora Cecere.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Supply Chain Insights. My name is Lora Cecere, and today it gives me great pleasure to continue the interviews with second and third generation supply chain pioneers that really paved the path for supply chain as it is today. I'm interviewing Cynthia Sikora today, and Cindy's with Lego, and I am excited to have you on the show. Cindy, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm also excited to be here.
Okay. Well, tell the group a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. I've been happily married for 23 years to my husband, and I am a mother of two teenage children, ages 16 and 13. I think that's important to state because I'm also currently the Vice President of Supply Chain Operations for the Americas region for the LEGO organization. This includes demand planning, supply and inventory planning, order management, customer logistics, distribution, fulfillment, all the supply chain functions that we're all familiar with, we know and love. But I could not have gotten here in my career without the love and support of my family. And the choices that we made for the family throughout our years to support the career, such as my husband being the stay-at-home parent to help be here for the children while I focused on my career. And sometimes that may sound like an easy choice, I think, but being a stay-at-home parent is just as challenging of a role as any other role. But it worked for us because I truly love what I do for work. And it was great that we made the choice to support my career goals together.
That's fabulous. So many people don't have that important discussion around how do we do this together. It sounds like you were able to really partner there. So congratulations. I don't know many women that are successful in that journey, so my hat's off to you. But let's go back and let's have Cindy talk to her 20-year-old or 30-year-old self. And what career advice would you have given her then?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is to always focus and just know that you can persevere. I don't think you have to choose one or the other. I think you can, I don't want to say have it all, but you can do the things you want to do. You just have to prioritize and communicate. So I think, looking back at my 20-year-old self, put in the time, make sure that you're dedicated to the role and that you love what you do, because really loving what I do has been, I think, the pivotal success point, because it's not, I don't have a problem getting out of bed every day because I really enjoy all the great challenges that we get to face within supply chain and trying to solve those. So stay true to yourself, make sure you're staying true to what your passions are, and just know that you can do what you set your mind to.
Well, Cindy, let's walk through your career and how you stayed true to yourself and that effective communication, because I think effective communication is a learned skill and something a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think, yeah, it's something that I think you get better the more you focus on and you practice. But so my career, I actually started, of course, foot in the door, as everybody does. I started with a company called Nabisco. I think we all know and love the Oreo cookies. But I started as an administrative assistant there while I was going to school part-time at night, earning my degree. But the opportunities started opening up, and I soon moved into a regional inventory deployment role, which led to a newly created supervisory role in the warehouse. And this is where I started to get my introduction into what supply chain was and realized that I really enjoyed the challenges here. So it was the start of my career. I was quite young. But I quickly learned that if I wanted more opportunity, I either needed to change companies or I needed to change locations. Because where I was, the opportunities to grow weren't any greater in the box that I was in. So, of course, those both come with trade-off choices. But I decided to not want to rebuild my reputation at another company, so I chose to move. It's an adventurous spirit that I have. And again, thank goodness my husband and I, so starting with the communication, that was our first choice together before we had a family. Are we willing to move? Are we willing to move away from our families and accept what that could mean for the future? But we both agreed that the opportunity was great. We were both willing to jump in, and we made our first move to another state, and that was my first managerial role. But I found that I enjoyed moving to locations, because what I learned by doing that was the cultures and the approach and the way with which people view things are different as you move. And that would be true for different organizations as well as different locations. But for me, this was an opportunity to see, even within my own organization, some of the ways with which we viewed things were different. And it opened my eyes and it helped me grow and expand. But I also got to see a different area of the country. So personally, that was rewarding as well. So that ended up being the first of 9 relocations that I have made to date. And not always for a promotion. Sometimes it was just a chance to broaden my skills, to get into an area that was new for me, to help build my supply chain background. Most recently, I moved to the Czech Republic to lead the Lego production planning area. And I had worked within factories, within craft foods before that, but this was my first chance to see a Lego production in action, and also prove that I could work within a different global culture. And being in a global company, I saw that as very important to both learn our internal manufacturing, but also prove to myself and the organization that my leadership capabilities could span across cultures.
So, Cindy, I'm taking away some concepts from what you're saying is be open to diverse experiences, be willing to go where they are, but be sure that you're partnering with your partner and family at home.
Yes.
Is that fair representation of so far what you would tell your 30-year-old self?
Yes, I think that's very fair.
And, in this process of different experiences, I also feel very fortunate that I've had diverse experiences, but I've really had to manage Lora to be open to the outcome, because sometimes you kind of are hardwired for the answer and you're not as good a listener as you need to be. And I've really had to work with Lora on those concepts. Your thoughts of how do you enter different organizations and maximize the diverse experience?
Yeah. So it's funny because I think, similarly, I also have to go through those. So if I use the experience with the Czech Republic experience, for example, it was not an immediate yes, let's go do that. Because I did think to myself, but I have manufacturing experience. What am I really going to get out of this? And that's where I had to talk myself into. And also I want to recognize, again, my family, my oldest was starting high school the year we moved. So that was a very difficult conversation to have. And to really prove to myself that the benefit of this move was something that was going to be both good for me professionally, which is why I wanted to do it, but also support personally the growth and development of my family and where we kind of saw ourselves. That doesn't always come easy. I think you really need to just weigh the pros and cons. My personal approach has always been I talk to people that have been through these experiences. I am really big on sharing and learning from others. And that is the listening skill that is required. And in doing that, I learned that I went into this saying, I believe our output is going to be much greater than the challenge that we're looking at. And I can say 2 years later that is absolutely the case.
And Cindy, where do you go to share and learn? Because I think that's so important to be able to network. But I think building that network and cultivating it takes time, and supply chain leaders are busy. And sometimes people will say, I don't really have time to do that. So how do you do that, and where do you go to listen and learn?
So the first thing I do, you're right, you need to invest time in your internal network. And I think there's always going to be trusted colleagues that you can reach out to. And that's sort of where I went to. And I do find, yes, they're busy, but if you manage the time, can I get 15 minutes to ask this specific question, to get your viewpoint on? I find that that's easier to set the expectation, to really set a reasonable amount of time and to be clear on what you're looking for. I find that people will make the time for those discussions if you prepare well.
Well, the other thing I would say, and learning, and I'm a 67-year-old woman back when there weren't women in supply chain. I watched the men, they always had lunch together, they played golf together, they were better at networking. And I tried to move, through hard work and really didn't pay as much attention to the need to network. And I think that was part of my struggle was, recognizing the value of spending time in that kind of arena.
It is so true. And I do think, and speaking as a woman, I can also say that I also relied heavily on my work output many times. And then as I moved through my career and some of the coaching that I received was just that. I really need to pay as much attention to the output of the work as I am to the relationship building. And I have invested in that. And sometimes it actually takes you, like, you really need to be conscious in scheduling that time and saying, I need to make sure I'm investing in this. But eventually I think it just becomes authentic in who you are. And I think that can happen, but it is important to recognize that is a critical skill.
Yeah, and I think making time for it and seeing it as important, right? Building relationships, I think, are so important, particularly when times are tough like now, right? Because people are a little edgy, right? And they're at home and, we're tired of being on online meetings. And, the more relationships you have, the more that you can have that conduit. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I rely so much on my networks now. Yeah, just because, when we were locked down and we couldn't even leave our homes for a while, it was like the only way to stay in touch and to stay sane during that time. So completely agree.
Well, Cindy, now when you think about your career and you think about the choices you made and people listening to this podcast, which could be all over the world, what advice would you have somebody entering the supply chain profession and wanting to be like Cindy?
I would say the first thing to know is there is so much opportunity in supply chain. It covers such a broad spectrum of functions, as I mentioned early on. The potential, growth and learning can be very far-reaching. So if entering the supply chain, hopefully you're hungry for that knowledge. You're looking to drive yourself forward, and that there could be a career that offers many, it crosses many different facets and allows you to really grow. I would also say people are your greatest asset. You need to talk with them. You need to care for them. And you will all be better and do better when you work together. If you come in and silo and really just focus on your execution, you miss that, as we were talking about within networking. People are critical within the supply chain, especially because it crosses such a broad area. One person cannot cover everything all on their own. So they need to reach out and network. And, today I would say data-driven and analytical skill sets are the two, in my opinion, most critical skill sets necessary for these roles. So make sure you're brushing up on these skills because we have so much data in the supply chain that is untapped and we really need people to help us tap that area.
Well, Cindy, you probably work with a lot of new bees coming out of school or coming out of, executive programs. What are they good at and where do they need to really focus to get that leg up?
So I do think that they're bringing in more of that data and analytical coming right out of school. So I think that is good for them. I think that I would just recommend the focus on just rolling up your sleeves and diving into many areas, and don't just focus on your specific role, but also be thinking about, where do I want to go from here? What do I want to do and how do I gain that skill set? So kind of branching out and supporting beyond just your area. So being able to reach beyond what you see yourself as right now.
That's so critical because when we put ourselves out there and raise our hands, we often get, experiences and doors that we never knew could be opened. And I think back to my career, right? I was always that hard-nosed, why doesn't technology work? And they put me on lots of technology implementation, which really helped me to become an industry analyst, right? And I would never have raised my hand if, that door hadn't opened. But if I'd said no, I wouldn't have been able to go through that door. So,
exactly.
Having the courage to go through doors you might not, feel so comfortable going through, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Stretching yourself wherever you have the opportunity and having faith that you can figure it out. If you don't have all the answers, you'll get there. But it's part of the growth.
Well, Cindy, thanks for being on the show today. Any last advice that you have just, for people that are listening and thinking about a career in supply chain?
Like I said, the only thing on my mind today as I think into supply chain going forward is the preparation of our workforce for the digital age. So just making sure that we're preparing not just the new people coming in, but also looking at the people that have been here a while and how do we help bring them along so we can harvest their knowledge and tenure, but also looking to where we need to be for the future of supply chain.
Well, I got to get underneath that a little bit. So how do you define digital and how do you prepare all workers for digital?
Yeah, so I think this is actually one of my passions right now because I think it's a transformation that I think everybody's going through. But personally, I can say we have so much data available in the supply chain arena, and we don't harvest the majority of it. And so much of what I see operationally within the supply chain is a lot still being done manually, and being able to tap into that data so that we are able to make decisions faster. We've got the data to support. We can really drive and just harvest that data in a way that helps us make better informed decisions. But it's not just about the people doing the job. It really is about these leaders now saying, we need this data. We need to prepare our teams for how are we using this? We need to prepare ourselves for, I won't accept anything other than an answer that comes with the data. And how do we do it without doing everything on spreadsheets that creates a ton of work and hours of work behind it? So to me, it's around how do we get our data together? How do we make sure we know how to analyze it in a good way? And that we are forcing ourselves to be data driven and insist that our decisions and strategies are founded on the data that we have that is accessible there, that I think will help us become stronger supply chain leaders and help us grow a stronger supply chain.
Well, that's a discussion all in itself, but maybe I'll invite you back for another show because most of our systems can't use disparate data and we're struggling to do this, right?
Right. You're exactly right. And this is why I see this as like our critical platform for how we need to position going forward.
So I encourage everyone to explore the art of the possible and new types of analytics and really get into the supply chain fundamentals and say, how do we fundamentally change and improve work? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Cindy, thanks for being on our show today. I love your product. Played with it. My top gift for my grandkids. And thank you for being there and bringing us great products and being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Until next time.